unmute. I'm just going to ask, as I call your name, if you could just unmute and tell me your name and who you're representing here today.
Sure. My name is Greg Hansen. I'm the creative director over here at the Cincinnati Zoo.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Kate Rechsteiner?
Rechsteiner, you got it. Yes, I'm our director of visitor experience here at the Cincinnati Zoo.
Okay. Welcome.
Thanks.
And Jeff, man, I know it's a weird pronunciation. What was it? I can't remember. Caney? Is that it?
It's Kern.
Kern. Oh man. Okay.
It's that O and E in German. One of my cousins' friends is named Kerner. Same thing, but it's with the you pronounce the O and the E with the like a umlaut or something, and you fuse the two together. And we can't pronounce it here in the United States. So.
All right. Well, welcome back, Mr. Kern. Sorry I got that pronunciation. Cannot promise I'll do any better next time. All right, then we have Trey Sheldon, our zoning plans examiner. Welcome, Trey.
Thanks.
Okay, I need to read through our hearing script, which will cover the procedure for the hearing, then we can jump right into it. So this is the February 8th, 2023 session of the zoning hearing examiner docket. The case before us today is case number ZH20230002. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and supplemental rules of the zoning hearing examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant, the applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. So for our purposes here today, I'll allow each of the folks here from the zoo to tell me about the project, why they think I should grant the relief, any background information they think is important. And in this case, I'll ask whoever's presenting on this to sort of maybe, since there's so many different requests for relief and so many different signs, if we could just go sign by sign and talk about each of the relief. I think Trey's laid it out pretty well in his staff report. If you guys have that handy, that could be a good tool to sort of orient us for today. And however you all want to do that, one or all of you can tell me about the project. It's really completely up to you, however you think is best to get the information to me. If there were anyone here from the public, they would then have an opportunity to present after you all have presented your case. I will give Trey an opportunity to provide some testimony in addition to his staff report. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to an application, the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut that testimony. And then finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make any closing statements. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or to make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony or documents, which is generally evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who's not present here at the hearing today. In the event of any technical difficulties with the Zoom technology, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly. If there's some defect that we can't fix that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with this hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing. Last thing I need to do here is just swear in all of our witnesses. So if you intend on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, asking any questions, really doing anything other than just strictly observing, then the zoning code requires that I swear you in. So if that's you, if you could take yourself off mute, I need everyone to raise their right hand and to answer out loud. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Great. Thanks, everyone. All right. Who will be taking the lead for us here today?
I'll start off, and then Kate and Greg can correct me. Greg's already corrected me once today, pretty major one.
Okay, floor is yours.
Thank you. So again, appreciate the opportunity to be with you and Trey this afternoon. We've been working on this project in some form or fashion for about a year, 6 months or so. More diligently, we've worked closely with the zoning department, Emily Ahouse, Trey, and CDOT, Brian Williams, who's our liaison with the zoo on this project, which this project is the replacement of 6 existing changeable copy signs that are in the combination of Clifton, Avondale, Coreyville neighborhoods, because we sit in 3 different neighborhoods. as defined by the city. The purpose of these signs is quite simply to direct motorists to our parking. And so the idea is that one parking lot is full, we can direct them to another and so on. We have upgraded our technology at the zoo. So in years past, we would park just say like the solar lot, which is the big lot on the west side of Vine. And then when it filled, we would open up other lots. We now have technology that allows us to know when the lots are full and to run the lots almost without human support. There's always something, but so what that's done is it's given us the ability to direct people to the best place to park or the most optimal place to park, which in a minor increment thing is actually like in the federal funding scheme of things, reducing congestion improves air quality, getting people off the road. All those things we feel are good and helpful. So again, we have 6 signs now. We are proposing to drop to 4. In your reference to the staff report, which Trey put together, and thank you for that, Trey. On figure 4, the width at the bottom of the changeable copy sign is 85 inches. And for whatever reason, in my write-up, I referred to that as 8 feet 1 inches, when in fact it is 7 feet 1 inch. So square footages and sizes are very similar to what we have out there now. They're a little bit taller, but the signs that we have out there now are about 76 inches wide. So we're very similar in footprint. And again, we have fewer of them. And so
You said you're going from 6 to 4.
Correct.
And are all 4 of these new signs, they're on the property, but near the parking lots?
So yes, in a manner of speaking. So we are here today for your review and hopefully approval of 5 of the signs. The 6th sign, when we were citing it in the field, is in the southwest corner of the intersection of Erkenbrecher and Euclid. And that is currently zoo controlled property, but it's in the process of the property is in the process of being dedicated as right of way to allow for the future widening of Erkenbrecher. So we have for one of the signs, one of the changeable copy signs, and I'll get to that when we take a look at the staff report. It's actually under DOTE jurisdiction as a revocable street privilege. And we have submitted for that and don't anticipate any problems.
Got it. Okay.
Okay. So does everyone have a copy of the staff report handy? David?
I do. Yeah.
Okay, good. All right. So if we can take a look at figure 5, that covers the first location of a changeable copy sign. And so that is at the entrance to the Vine Street parking lot. The parking lot is designed to work in a one-way circulation. So we have the sign located on the south side of the drive, which does not obstruct any view of the entrance because it's operated as a one-way. If it was a two-way, that wouldn't work. But we have a one-way operation. That's how we're permitted with DOTE to run our permit or our parking lot. So that's the first location. Then on figure 6, this shows 2 locations of B and C. C is at the intersection, is the sign on the left at the intersection of Euclid and Erkenbrecher. That's the one that's under DOTE jurisdiction. And then there's one at the corner of Dury and Erkenbrecher. And there currently is a sign at the first and third signs locations that I just described. And
So
then
A and C.
yes,
Okay.
A, C, and then E. There are all signs there now. In fact, one of the photos in our section 6 memo is at the sign E close to location. Then the next one again is sign E on figure 7, which is at the corner of Shields and Vine Street. Then we have what I would call wayfinding signs, which are shown on figure 8, which is just a static sign that is an eye catcher And we are proposing those at 2 locations. One at a parking lot that we have on Dury Avenue, which is shown on figure 10, and one at the primary entrance to the new parking lot off of Euclid, which is shown on figure 9. I know it's a lot to digest.
Sure. Okay.
So, and then one other thing just to point out to you, do you have, Mr. Sturkey, the photos that we provided?
Yes, I
Okay.
do.
All right, so photo number 1 is near that location E, and that's, what we have now. And what we're proposing to put back from an overall sign standpoint is very similar, but the changeable copy area is bigger. But then what we wanted to give you the context on is that on photo number 2, which is, the vehicle, what we call a VMS, vehicular messaging sign, or variable message sign, to kind of give you the scale of what those things are to attract the attention of traffic. That sign is 11'6" wide. It's 6 foot high, the changeable copy part. You can see how the sign is parallel to the trailer that it's on, because it can't go down the road, perpendicular, because it'd be an oversized load. But when it's
sorry, I'm having trouble finding sign number 2 in the materials.
okay, can you see this on the screen?
I can, yeah.
So, so this is, a basically a construction traffic sign, and
Right.
what put this in there because they're huge. People have no idea how big these signs are until they're up next to them. And when this thing is in operation, it's not at this elevation. It's up, so the top of the sign is 10 feet high. So we've done everything we can to minimize our things, but still be helpful visually. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is, just for the context of the area, this photo 3 is a directional sign at Children's Hospital, which is, honestly, very large. And I'll be quick to point out, so Trey doesn't say it for me, that's in the institutional zoning area. It's not apples to apples, all those things. But what we've tried to get these things to be as small as possible, as effective as possible, and consider the discussions we had with Trey, Emily, and Brian Williams. So, because of how the sign code is written, and I'll let Trey jump in here, because we're like one applicant, one use, the code does not really envision a user like us with multiple entrances, multiple locations. One of the sign limitations is like, and jump in here, Trey, like 1 or 2 square feet for like an entire institution. And when you look in the zoning code at like what we have and the example that's given, you could have a residential subdivision with 350 lots and they would be entitled to, I think, 350 square feet, but because we're one user, we get that 1 or 2 square feet. So, we, quite honestly appeal to your good graces to an extent, but we have, designed this to minimize all the impacts. Kate or Greg, you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, I think from my standpoint, obviously I'm our director of visitor experience, so I am trying to take care of our visitors. And for that, it is clear, concise communication, knowing that we do have multiple potential lots where they can be going. But by us taking care of our visitor, I think you all know we try to be really good partners with the city. And that's also my goal, is to get people off the streets and into these lots as efficiently as possible. And I think especially at a time like Festival of Lights, where we do have this influx of traffic all at one time. I mean, this is really our goal, is that we're trying to make everyone's lives easier with these particular signs that help us communicate and help us, depending on the situation, we can be very flexible, which unfortunately, our signs right now, some of them still work, but it's, I want to say it's 150 characters or less. So it's just not very flexible for our needs.
Okay. Is there I'm having trouble finding pictures or mock-ups of what the new signage is going to look like? Could you?
Here it is here.
They're on my figures. They're on my,
Okay.
on my staff report.
Is that going to be the sign for all of them? Or is that going to
No,
be how
that's
it'll
only
look for all
for
of them?
3 of them. That's for A, B, and E. So that's going to be the ones that Jeff spoke to initially. Those are the ones with the changeable copy. Then those other 2 signs are essentially entry feature signs at 2 of the. They're not on major arterials. They're right next to the parking lot entrance, if that makes sense. So they're not going to change and tell people, hey, hang a right, for available parking. These are static signs that are basically pole signs with a little blade on the side.
Can you see that, David?
I can, yeah, okay.
And there are 2 of those.
Yeah, that's in the staff report as figure 8.
Got it. So are we talking about 5 total signs here?
Correct.
Okay.
For your purposes, 5.
So C doesn't need any relief, is that?
Right, because it's under
Is that right?
different jurisdiction.
It's going to be in the right of way by the time it's erected.
Got it. Okay. All right.
So we're predominantly asking for dimensional variances. We have one locational variance for the sign along Vine Street at the entrance to the parking lot, because there's both in the traffic engineering world and in the zoning world, there's a safety triangle at intersections where you try to keep that vision clear. We want to put a sign in that triangle because we don't operate it as a fully directional intersection. It's only a one-way in. If it was an out, we would not be proposing it to be done this way.
Okay.
And again, that was one of the ones, because when we went to the field, when we originally sent this stuff out to DOTE and zoning, we actually had the sign on the other side of the intersection. So, we, as a group, we had consensus and moved it, which is the same as the sign C, which is not under your jurisdiction, but we had it on the other side of the street, and we all agreed it would be much better on that southwest corner of Euclid and Erkenbrecher.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, cumulatively, it looks like a lot because, we have multiple signs, but we're kind of similar to that sign I showed you from Children's. Children's has about 10 of those signs around in and around the area. Because they have a similar operating footprint. They have multiple garage entrances and multiple building entrances, for that matter. And then to their extent, they have places where they don't want people to go, like their emergency areas and whatnot. So our signs are not as big as theirs, but we're trying to accomplish some of the same things.
Gotcha. Okay.
Does that help?
It does. Yeah. I have a few more questions, but wanted to give Mr. Hanson or Ms. Recksteiner had anything more she wanted to provide an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I was around for the first variation of these signs back in 2009. And yeah, at the time we were limited in technology to I think Jeff, you said the 150 characters. And so operationally, I've been here long enough to hear the constraints that put us under as far as trying to communicate to guests effectively, quickly, as things are changing, very rapidly as attendance is really increasing, especially for times like Festival of Light. So the changeable copy signs would definitely be like a godsend to us trying to alleviate those issues.
Yeah, what is the tech on the new ones? You guys have referenced 150 characters for the old ones.
The tech
what are
on
the
the new ones is
capabilities?
effectively a TV screen in essence.
Okay. Is it like LED?
Correct.
Greg, yeah.
Yeah, it's very similar to LED. They call it, I think, SMD, which is single mode diode. It's very similar to LED in that like each little point of light is kind of like a pixel. It's essentially an LED sign.
Gotcha. Okay. And so is it capable of displaying anything a TV screen would?
Technically, it could. Our intention is to use it for literally just language. I think technically it could display other things than that, but yeah, our intention would be text.
Okay. Is the intention also that it'll be static in that it will not be changing or flashing or anything like that?
Kate, what would you think on that? I think the only time it would change is literally if the message is changing, meaning like, is this lot now open or closed? I think that's the only intention that we have. Kate, would you agree with that, or would you?
I do agree. We would like it to be static, one slide. The only thing that I would think about is if there was a potentially complex message that we needed to communicate to where there was one static and then it would switch to another static. Similar to how the signs that we already have out there, the big crazy ones that Jeff showed. I mean, sometimes we need two different opportunities to showcase the message, but I would hope that everything that we need to say would be able to fit on there. That's definitely the goal.
So to maybe help inform the conversation, David, it's not our intent to have like an orange barrel media sign like on Fountain Square or you see in other places downtown. Otherwise, we'd already be heading towards a notwithstanding ordinance. So we don't want, first of all, we hope we get your approval, obviously. We don't really want permission to play a TV show, for lack of a better thing, but we do want to be able to, as Kate said, let's just say it's after dark and the zoo is closed. It might just say zoo is closed, and it might say, opens to members at 9 and then have a parking. So there could be a scenario where there are 2 or 3 slides, but it would not be, crazy. I mean, it is a changeable copy sign. There is some intent for that, but there's no intent to again, play videos and do things that are distracting to traffic.
The rule there, if it helps, somebody wants to finish, but the rule in the zoning code is a 10-second interval. So it as long as something is almost like a slide deck on somebody's presentation, kind of where it fades from one thing into another and doesn't increase beyond tighter than 10-second intervals. That's what the code limits it to. That keeps it from being a constantly moving, a moving image.
That is something we can completely live within.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I certainly think that I do think these requests are reasonable. I just wanted to dig in a little bit on the exact types of use, considering the technological capability. I have been seeing an increased amount of LED signs coming through for all types of different purposes, and I think it's a really slippery slope, before we look like the Vegas Strip in Cincinnati if these keep getting approved. So I'm mainly concerned with frequency of the changing, and honestly, if it's just words, that's not nearly as much. If it's images or flashing lights or advertisements, things like that can be really distracting for drivers. We already have enough screens to distract them between car screens and cell phones. Just from a public safety perspective, just wanted to make sure that the uses were going to be limited to mostly wayfinding or strictly informational about the zoo.
And that's where we are. And I mean, so I would characterize it as words and arrows. And if we are fortunate enough to get your approval, we would not mind in one way that you reference the section that Trey just talked about, where it can't change, more than once every 10 seconds. Obviously we would be required to conform to that anyway, but if if it helped the matter to have that in the letter, we would be, we're going to comply.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. Did you guys have anything else before I let Trey take the floor here? Okay, Trey.
I was going to say,
Sure.
I'm really glad you're looking out for us and not letting us be another Vegas. So thank you for bringing it out there. That's important.
I'm telling you, these LEDs, I feel like it's a slow train coming. There's a lot of people pushing for them all over the city, and I think it could get out of control. But anyway, that's neither here nor there right now. Trey, what did you want to say?
Well, I mean, first of all, Vegas may have a few things on the zoo. The zoo has a few things on Vegas too. So yeah.
Thank you.
It's a very unique and cool place. One thing I wanted to make a point about this, David, is if you look at the details for those changeable copy signs, the site plans for them, this is something I was out of town during the time when Emily and Brian Williams did the site visit with Jeff. but Jeff and Brian and I had spoken previously, and you can see on there what's called a clear sight triangle or clear line of sight on those three signs. And I think that does an excellent job of illustrating how how large the sign almost needs to be to anticipate it. We're talking about big distances here with the zoo here. I mean, it occupies entire blocks. So those three diagrams, those three figures for sign A, and then sign C, and then I believe that would be sign E, end up very much illustrating if you were in a car, say turning off to coming around the bend of Vine Street from Coreyville, the sign has to get your attention to direct you where to go. Because somebody can use their GPS to know where the zoo is, but they're not going to know which lot is open, and that's the very purpose of what's being done here. So those images, those site plans that Jeff provided do an excellent job of conveying exactly why they need to be of that height and size for someone to literally see them from a block and a half away to anticipate how they're going to maneuver in traffic. I hope that makes sense.
Sure.
The other thing I did want to address is that the zoo is not only unique in many ways as far as just an institution, but it's unique in that much of it's on either land owned by the city or at some of it land owned by various entities of the zoo, and it's all under Parks and Recreation. Parks and Recreation zoning kind of presumes, I think, that you'd have a government entity there. Like, in other words, if the US EPA puts signage up there, they have exemption as a government entity from zoning from that. So just up the way from the zoo, there's the US EPA. If they want to put a sign up, as long as it's within reason for transportation and not causing a problem with transportation, they're outside the scope of zoning. They're exempt. The zoo is not a government entity. It just happens to be located on much of it on city land for the past over 100 years. So it's unique, and there is no specific signage section for Parks and Recreation, and I can't explain why. When the zoning code was drafted, there is no specific. I can only presume that it assumes it's a government entity on that PR land, but this is not the case here. I hope I'm making sense. And
Sure.
So you kind of have to shoehorn this into. That's why we ended up coming up with the entry feature signs, and why, to Jeff's point, it's so out of whack with the 1 square foot. Essentially, those two pole signs have to be entry feature signs because they have to be within the signs permitted in any district part of the code. There is no other place to hang our hat, if you will, right? That's it, because there is no zoning signage code for PR as there is for other districts. So again, that's why I called it out on my staff report, and Jeff has noted, other institutions around there. There's University of Cincinnati, the Veterans Administration Hospital, VA Hospital, Children's, all have very large signage, but they're all in IR districts that have their own, like they have their own spelling out how the signage code works. For the zoo, because it's not a government entity exempt, we had to fit it into this, basically shoehorn it, if that makes sense. So I wanted to cover those two things, both the line of sight, which helps explain, hey, why do these have to be this size? Well, it's for traffic safety. And the other two is to explain why it might seem like the ask is so big when it really isn't. It's because we had to fit it within a specific part of the zoning code. There was no place else to go.
Sure. Okay.
And
That makes sense. Thanks, Trey.
And when the zoo was like brought into the PR, like none of that stuff was really even fully thought out. We were previously under RMX, and we probably could have actually done some of this under RMX. I'm not certain. But the other thing to point out is Trey described those what we call sight distance triangles. The vehicle is about a football field and a half from the sign. From a safety perspective, it's 445 feet. And that's a function of the speed limit. So, if it was a higher speed, it would be even farther away to provide that safe sight distance triangle. But, this is a function of the speed, and it's a considerable distance.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
and we go back to that one photo number 2, Mr. Sturkey, just of how big these signs, typically are just for a temporary construction situation. We're of course not asking for anything near that size.
Sure, sure. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I'm just making sure I'm orienting myself properly with all these signs. It looks like D and F, those are the signs that are located closest to residential. Is that, am I looking at that right? That'd be the Drury lot and the Euclid Lewis Avenue. Are those the stationary pole signs?
Yes, D and F have residential adjacent to them, if you will.
Gotcha. With no changeable copy incorporated,
Yeah,
that's right.
no
Yeah.
lighting, no nothing.
Correct.
What I'm getting at here, are you anticipating any adverse effects in terms of brightness impacting adjacent residential properties for A, B, and E?
I am not. Just like go through, like you said, to get my things right. For A, we own all the property around it, both on the east and west side of the road. And don't anticipate any issues there. And then for the other B, C, and E, I think we'd be fine. At location B, we've had 2 lit signs there for 13 years without a single complaint. Quite honestly, if we did get a complaint, we could turn them off like a half hour after the zoo closes, or there's an operational solution that if we got a complaint, that we would respond to it.
Gotcha.
There, as much as I don't want to put a bunch of restrictions on this, hopefully what is an approval, the reality of it is these signs aren't to let you know that the zoo is there. They're to let you know that there's parking. So they only have a high function like immediately prior to the zoo opening, and then as the zoo closes, they don't have, they're not as important as a sign that says, hey, it's the casino. You're not finding the zoo with these signs, you're finding the parking. So there's some operational flexibility that we could offer if we had problems.
Okay.
David, there is one last thought that I think it is important to note. I didn't touch about under my staff report other than stating that these signs, the distance and the size of them was necessary, for wayfinding and vehicular safety. But thinking back, I've done these zoo projects for the entire time I've been here with the zoning administration, working with Jeff. And this is part of an overall scheme, with the parking and so on. And I just wanted to point out that I recall that when the parking was first conceived of here, and especially the zoo's about to spend a small fortune on a pedestrian bridge over the top of Erkenbrecker to go from the parking lot to up into the plaza. And I recall that when we were having discussions, and I just thought this was noteworthy, there were several accidents involving pedestrians, and I think a young lady was even killed, sadly. And that is part of the reason the zoo is spending, like I said, a small fortune, I believe, to build this, a considerable sum of money to do this, to have that pedestrian bridge for safety, because there's heavy traffic on Vine Street, and like I said, there have been a couple of pedestrians hit and really tragically one killed. And so I think that it was super important when Jeff was working with DOTE to make sure that this would contribute to pedestrian safety, not just wayfinding. That was one thing that I think I probably should have raised it, or Jeff, or I should have, but I just thought I would, because it's important.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trey. Okay. And it's been a while, honestly, since I've been over on Yule or Erkenbrecker, but are those houses there near Euclid and Erkenbrecker, have those all been demolished? Are those all gone?
A lot of them have. Do I have the ability to share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hang on, let me
I'm seeing three there closest to Euclid on Erkenbrecker that look, can't tell if those are still there, if they're gone.
Can you see like the Google Earth trying to
Yeah.
load up?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, I can see it.
Give me a moment here. So, and as we can all be snarky because we're proud of like how we do things. The zoo basically pretty regularly writes a letter to its neighbors saying, hey, if you're interested in selling, let us know. They don't go and like send in a real estate agent who's like hiding their identity and a few other things. So, we most of the neighbors know that when they want to do something or change something, that the zoo would be interested in buying their property. So this is, where is my, here we go. So this is the newly constructed Euclid here. Lewis in here has been vacated and abandoned. And then these houses here are all gone. And we actually have a building permit that's been approved to put another 100 parking spaces at this location. The land next to this is owned by Children's, who's looking at doing something very similar, quite honestly.
Okay.
And just so you know, like when Festival of Lights happen, we do use like some of these parking lots here. And then, where's the other one, Kate? Is this the Goodman garage right here?
It's down there. Is it? I think it might be, yeah, that one right there. You had your on it. Yeah.
So we do try to work with our institutions to, address the parking concerns in the neighborhood. Like tomorrow at UC, there's a career fair, and attendees at the career fair can park in this lot and then get a shuttle to the career fair. So we are sensitive to not continuously building surface lots. We're actually not a fan. Up until COVID came, David, I was supposed to build a 1,800 space parking garage right here.
Mhm.
And effectively COVID kind of zapped that.
Gotcha.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thanks
All
for,
right, I'm
thanks
gonna
for pulling that
stop
up.
sharing. Yeah.
All right. I don't believe that I have any other questions. Anything else from anyone from the zoo and closing or otherwise before we adjourn here?
I just want to convey that like we put a lot of thought into this and try to like minimize the impact, and these aren't they aren't 1 square inch bigger than we think that they really need to be. Like was not arbitrary. So and again, we've worked very closely with Trey and Emily and Brian Williams and put a lot of time and effort into this. And quite honestly, we're here to ask, for your approval. We were fortunate enough 2 weeks ago that you were able to tell us at the hearing that we had approval. That's possible at this point. We'd love to hear that so we can get this equipment ordered.
Sure.
Albeit that
just wanna make a
the was
note.
considerably simpler, obviously.
Right. Just want to make a note before I forget. Okay. All right. Let's leave it at that. I appreciate that. I appreciate all the testimony from the members of the zoo here today. Thanks for being here. And thank you, Trey, for your staff report and your testimony here today. I have had a chance to review the application materials. I am, I think, fairly familiar now with the actual property in the surrounding area. And so based on that, based on the staff report and the testimony here today, I am going to approve the requested relief.
Thank you.
As you know, Jeff, I need to formalize that approval in a written decision. One thing I will not finalize at this very moment is any particular restrictions I may put on frequency and flashing and that sort of thing that we talked about earlier. I just want to spend a little bit more time with that. I may put some restrictions on how quickly that can happen. But I am going to approve the relief in terms of the signage, the type of sign, and all the
Can
other
we
things
have like,
that are requested.
David, can we have like beer advertising on these signs?
That's what I'm trying to avoid. Miller
Right,
Lite
I
commercials
figured that's where you
playing
would go.
on the
You
road.
realize he's gonna
Yeah.
call you Kate, he's gonna call you Katie every time from now on.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's distractions are
Right.
is what I'm going to try to avoid. So I may craft it as a condition or two of approval based on that, but that will not impact your ability to erect these signs and to get the process started with the purchase order. So hopefully you guys can get started based on that verbal approval today, and I will have a written decision out to each of you in the form of a PDF within 2 weeks. As soon as you have that, you can, as you know, Trey can approve the permit and you can move on to the next step.
Thank you. And if there is like a question that you have about like, hey, can you live with this restriction that I want to, put in the letter? Kate and Greg are the people to talk to.
Okay.
So you can certainly keep me in the loop and all those things, but like they're the ones, they're my clients here.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, I think I think I have most of the information that I'll need. I mean, there is no objection to some restriction on frequency of the changing the copy on there. Okay.
No.
I mean, the 10-second interval is kind of mandatory anyhow, so.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, we offered it. If you wanted to put that in the letter, it would probably help us like show zoo management, like what you can and cannot do with these things, or what's even worse than a zoo senior staff member is a random board member, sees these screens and wants to have a great idea. So,
Right. Yeah.
So that we're not opposed to seeing that stuff in the letter, even if it's elsewhere in the code, because it'll make our lives easier too.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll reference that code section and spell out as explicitly as possible any other conditions, but I think that it will mostly be related to the frequency.
Great.
I just have one question, just not procedural for here, but oftentimes I've already seen something or it's in for permitting when we have one of these items for the zoo. Jeff or Greg or Kate, do you know whether a sign company is going to be applying for the permits or who will be doing that? And if so, ballpark time?
Yeah, we do. We have been aligning with the sign company to fabricate these. Once they do, Jeff, I might need to talk with you about, what we need to do to get the permits. I'm not exactly.
Probably figured that, Trey, we probably figured that the sign applicant would apply for the sign contractor would apply for the permit. And that the drawings that we submitted for the zoning approval would be part of that submission. They might be numbered slightly differently or whatever, but those 3 drawings that were the meat and potatoes of the original, denial letter would be in that package.
That's exactly right. And then all the specs for the building plan examiner to review will be in there as well. But that's great. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, you bet.
Okay. Any other questions now? All right.
Thank you.
Sure. If anything comes up, feel free to reach out to myself or to Trey. If you'd like a status update on the decision, you can reach out to me directly. I'm happy to provide that for you. Good luck with the project, everyone. Hope you have a great day, and we're adjourned.